Cynthia.
Hello.
Dan.
Hey.
Hi.
Thanks for
Everyone else.
Thanks for being on this episode of the Paper Robots. But this is we're back for podcast questions.
Yay.
You're both familiar with the concept.
Yeah.
It's my favorite.
I did that last time I was on this show, right?
I you know what? We don't even know the last time any of us were even on this show, including myself.
I do this show like once a year. I can't be expected to keep up with this. I need you guys to keep up.
I know. We actually
what
have
I do on your show.
We have a listener on the show who just follows Dan's appearances.
Thanks,
a Twitter. Mom. Yeah, you can follow her Twitter.
I actually wake up every morning and I think I might be on the show. I don't know.
It's just me talking awkwardly.
Like, hey, Cynthia, how do you feel about this?
You're like, is this what episode is this? And I'm like, it's episode. I have to go to work right now. But this is video. We didn't have high quality video like this last time.
Ooh la la.
No. And I tell you what the best part about this is that you didn't tell me there's going to be a video until I rolled up in like a ratty T-shirt from 2002.
Look, I like to shoot from the hip, and then figure the rest out later. Type of attitude, and I think you're representing that well.
Yeah, because usually you're wearing like a nice cardigan or something.
Yeah,
you quite frequent the sweater.
Yeah,
I do. Although I'm thinking of making a change. I've been very soft the last couple of years. Cardigan Dan has been sort of the mode.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of doing a king mod.
Cardigan is what it was actually described as in 2017.
You might say that's part of the issue. That little punlet right there.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of making a move to like Blazer Dan.
Ooh.
Which is to say like a men's suit jacket, not not like Blazer Dan.
Blazer Dan, dude. 420 forever.
I know we all have it in our heads that you're actually going to be wearing like a men's suit, like kind of blazer, like something nice. But no, you're going to come in like tie-dye shirts and like a single dread on your hair.
Okay, so I started one time. I noticed it was 420. And my girlfriend...
I noticed it was 420.
I don't know what sparked my memory there. I noticed it was 420, and my girlfriend Jackie is on the East Coast, and so she's 3 hours ahead. So that's like a good time to call her. So I called her up, and I was like, hey, it's 420 when everybody's supposed to call their girlfriend. Just like as a funny, silly meme. But I did it exactly twice, and now whenever I notice it's 420, I'm like, oh, I should call Jackie.
Everyone else is like, I feel like I know this is 420. I should get high. Everyone else is like, yeah, I'm gonna get high, and then you're over here. I should definitely call Jackie. Now people across the nation and world are just gonna call someone.
Jackie.
Gonna call my girlfriend.
or a Jackie. It's just gonna look up a phone book, call Jackie. You actually know where 420 came from, right?
Ayo,
Jackie in 1600s. No, but. Speaking of, this is a perfect segue. Speaking of ending cardigans,
and 420.
And 420, because that's always appropriate for any situation. Sponsored? No, I'm kidding. Smash that like button. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to plug anything.
Do smash the like button.
Is endings and coming to an end, letting things reach their natural conclusion, and that's what this theme for this episode is. It's podcast questions, endings, and as creators and consumers, observers of the arts as well, I wanted to talk about like how we end our own creations, or like what we think about our endings, and diving into that as much as I want to talk about a movie with an ending and how we feel about endings and the kind of ongoing series of comics or the reboots and franchises across all mediums. So this one is endings. We'll see how far down the list we get, because there's a lot of avenues to go down. For it being so definitive, there's a lot of options.
Well, I'm into it. Let's get going.
All right.
Let's begin this show about endings.
We will start.
For every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. That's a line from that famous one-hit wonder from the 90s, Fastball's the Way.
Thank you. I'm gonna get the rights to them, and you'll hear it, or you won't hear that.
All right, what we got?
Well, first, I gotta cue up the theme song. So go with the podcast questions theme song.
Hello, welcome to today's episode of Podcast Questions with your host, Logan Naugle.
So at first, I have to try to sound smart, so I'll read something.
Okay.
The definition of ending: an end or final part of something, especially a period of time, an activity, or book, or movie, or comic, or etc. So the final part of something is kind of like the key phrasing for an ending, in my opinion, because it doesn't have to be like a conclusion. I think is a different way of an ending or a different way of looking at it. But the final part of something I get mad at in movies is not having a conclusion. But that is the final part of the movie. And
Nocturnal Animals. That was the movie I was thinking of that we recently saw. And the ending, you were like, and I was like,
just show me 20 more minutes of this movie.
Yeah. Nocturnal Animals has a no good ending.
Yeah.
That's the thing about an ending. The ending lends context to everything. The ending of a story is what makes the beginning meaningful. Like, whenever you're going through a story, you're kind of in this sort of Schrodinger's cat state of enjoying it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of never know whether or not you enjoyed a movie all the way through until you get to the end, by definition. And so an ending is responsible for maintaining the promises made by everything that came before it. They're incredibly important. It's really hard to find a movie everybody likes that does not somehow break off the end at the ending.
Yeah, I mean, Interstellar.
Break off the end of the ending.
Interstellar is a perfect example. I love that movie. I enjoyed the ending, but for a lot of people, the ending being it kind of optimistically ambiguous and like love finds a way type
if
of
anything,
ending. I enjoyed
the
it.
The problem with the end of that movie is not enough ambiguity. Like they offer very definite answers.
Well, they offer an answer.
And the answer is love.
Until he,
yeah, that's true. I mean, but what is love? What is love? Baby, don't hurt me.
Ask me a question.
All right. So the first question is, what's an end? No.
Oh my God.
How end? How end?
How end?
Twitter asks, how end? No. I guess I want to talk about ending. We'll start, I guess, as a consumer, because I think that's a good way in. Everyone's seen a movie, or like just referencing the movies we did. We've all consumed something. Star Wars, infinite number of comics. Like there's all these like sequels or endings. Like how do we feel about an ending in a movie? Like
I'm in favor of it.
Does a franchise like have to end? Like is the idea of Star Wars continuing on in both directions, prequel and sequel, apparently? Is that like something that you find okay? Because like bringing up the idea of like an end helps define the beginning, but then you can look at each thing as its own movie, and like the original trilogy, like the new movies don't take away from that. So at the same time, an end can help define the beginning and everything. But if a movie can be self-contained, or even an issue of a book or an episode or anything, just kind of as the consumer, what do you want out of an ending? I guess of a series or even an episode. Like what makes you satisfied? I think defining what we enjoy in endings or what we look for, and then launching from there.
Well, a good ending relies on what the format is. Like take a show like Atlanta, which I really love. Every episode of Atlanta is kind of a self-contained short story. The characters have lives that continue on to other stories, but every installment is a complete unit. Now you compare that to something like, I don't know, like a Netflix show, like Daredevil. Every episode of Daredevil is part of a continuing narrative, but there is a structure, a rise and fall, a building and release of action to every episode. a thing can have like little soft endings, even though the story continues.
Yeah.
Sort of like the individual rooms of the Titanic, flooding and cutting off to ideally keep the whole ship afloat. So really what you look for in an ending of like an individual episode of something is just a resolution to the question posed at the beginning of that segment. But a resolution that is small enough or incomplete enough to allow for an ongoing story in a way that both encourages you to continue with the narrative and also to feel like you got something out of that one episode of TV or that one episode of a comic book.
Right, because I guess it used to be, a lot of TV series, you watch an episode and the world kind of resets next Wednesday when you tune in.
Yeah, like Pokemon or Sailor Moon that I've been watching.
Like early Simpsons or early any of those kind of sitcom type shows. It's like the world resets even, at the end, whatever happened, whatever it was like, you got the moral lesson, you got your, after school special ending. And then next week, all the kids have either unlearned or everyone's kind of reset back to their factory settings to learn a new thing again. And now we have, with serialized, media, you have maybe a 3-issue arc, 3-movie arc, while each one should be satisfied.
Yeah, there's a difference between a series of connected episodes and a story that is artlessly cut into parts.
Yeah. Like, I was talking to my sister about this because she just started watching Breaking Bad. And Breaking Bad, like, that is a perfect example of, like, how each episode just leaves you on a cliffhanger and you have to keep watching to get the whole complete story. And that's also one series where it was like, I wanted it to end. Like everything awful was just kept happening, one thing after another. And it's like, this is at its worst. Like everything's at its worst. How could this end like with well? And it doesn't. Like it doesn't. Like it does in a way, but then in the end, like everything was just right. I don't want to say. I don't know. It's super old, so I don't want to say any spoilers. But
you never know.
Yeah,
never know.
I guess so. Maybe we should talk about endings as a finite thing, as like a limited run, as a one-off type of thing, and discuss what we look for in that. I'll bring up because I think one of the things I want to talk about is like letting a project end and knowing that, and like both as someone consuming it as well as someone creating it. So I'll bring up something like Watchmen. So I think maybe to the general public, Watchmen is a graphic novel, then developed into a movie, and it's a self-contained thing. But the success of this graphic novel getting a movie and continuing to be talked about and thought about and taught about, and I'm just thinking of other alliteration now, is that its success of being so of quality is that it's commercially now like, well, we have to go back to that playground, and we got before Watchmen, and now Watchmen is being
Doomsday Clock.
Yeah, now it's being introduced into the DC world as a whole, and a part of that ongoing continuity, which will be forever lost into the times of some iteration. So I guess, what do we like? How do you feel about endings? Like defining them as like Sean Murphy's White Knight is another example. It's supposed to be a limited run. Should it end? Do we want things to end? Should we be satisfied if we don't get a sequel? If there was never a new Star Wars movie ever made after the original trilogy, is that okay?
Well,
you have to tell the fans so that they can know, because they're not going to have opinions.
That's hard.
Well, there's two kinds of making a thing, because there's a product and then there's a team. There's a creative body and creative output. So like one of my favorite examples is Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol. So Grant Morrison wrote the Doom Patrol for about 34 issues, I think. And throughout the whole of the arc, and this is a really good comic. I'm gonna kind of spoil it, but it's incredibly worth reading, and it's easily collectible, or it's been collected into trades that are easily buyable. So over the course of Morrison's run on the Doom Patrol, two characters of the team, Crazy Jane and Cliff, the Robot Man, have this relationship that sort of builds over the course of the series, and it's a very interesting, compelling, and unusual relationship that at the end, when it like culminates and then really getting together, feels really earned and really powerful and kind of perfect. Like it ends perfectly. And then Morrison left the book, but the book kept going. And Rachel, I can't remember the name of the writer. Rachel Pollack, I think, was the name of the writer who came on after Morrison. The first thing that she did in the first storyline was break Cliff and Crazy Jane up. But that was the right beginning for the story she was telling. That her new voice, her new cycle on Doom Patrol, it made sense for them to split up. And so that does not invalidate the ending that Morrison brought Cliff and Jane to. Because, and this is something I return to a lot, and I feel like it alienates some people, but Cliff and Jane don't exist. Rachel Pollack didn't actually break them up because they never got together because they don't exist. And even if they did exist, Cliff is the human brain in a robot body, and Crazy Jane is a mutant with a dozen personalities, each of which have their own superpowers. Even if they existed, they don't exist. They couldn't exist. What matters is the journey, the emotions of the arc that Morrison took us on. And once that is done, the magic built around these fake characters has been released. And so when you talk about should there be more Watchmen, well, Moore isn't writing the new Watchmen. Jeff Johns is. Moore didn't write any of the before Watchmen either. So that it's different cycles of energy with characters who, again, just don't exist. So I think that when a creator has the opportunity to bring that cycle to a close so definitively, like Morrison did on Doom Patrol, like Moore did with Watchmen, like Neil Gaiman did with Sandman, like Bendis did with Ultimate Spider-Man, I think that that is a thing unto itself. And if you subscribe to the idea that subsequent iterations ruined previous iterations,
yeah,
I kind of think that's you doing it wrong.
Yeah, like
that's user error.
I feel like, okay, I don't know if that's something that us as creators are very conscious about. Like, we are able to separate, like, okay, this creator worked on this project and this one did that. Like, I know I'm able to do that. Like, what was it? We were watching Terminator Judgment Day.
Yeah.
And I was like, you were trying to talk about the Christian Bale one, and I was like, what? I was like,
which
what?
I haven't even seen.
I was like, no, in my head that doesn't exist, because there's this one, and it was magic for me, and it was amazing, and I understand there's other movies and that were made, and that's fine. But this one's mine, and this one's magical.
Yeah.
And I am not going to, like, entirely hate on them. I'm just going to, like, no, because I don't want to get caught up in that or anything. Well, but, it's like, just this one matters so much to me. And it's like doing that same thing with, like, a lot of remakes that are happening. Like, even, like, with Ghostbusters, a lot of people were mad about the new Ghostbusters. And they're like, oh, it's all women or whatever it is. But that one, I know. It was ridiculous. And the movie is so good.
Yeah.
It was hilarious.
I liked it a lot.
Great. And I was able to watch that and still separate, like, original Ghostbusters and look at it that way. And it's hard to, like, try to educate the public about that. It's like, try not to, like, have them.
Well, because I think the idea is, if you are the consumer of the product or the the art, you're not supposed to separate it because you're supposed to continue to buy it based on this quantified IP, based on this license, based on
and it contradicts a lot of like what's going on in your head and what's happening.
It's all. I love that you brought up Judgment Day, and I think Terminator Salvation is the name of the movie with Christian Bale in it, which I saw and I liked it. Okay, but it's
what?
But it's that's such a good example because the movies, they came out over 10 years apart. None of the same actors are in it, really.
Nothing's really the same.
No, yeah, it kind of has one of the same characters, sort of. But it's like, why would these two incredibly different movies by totally different teams affect each other?
The same way I feel about Star Wars. Like, a lot of people don't like the newer movies, but I'm like, they're not going to be like the old movies. The old movies are the old movies. Nothing could compare to that. Like, nothing could compare to the original ones. And we can talk about the what was it, the episode 1 through 3, but that's a whole nother thing. But the more recent ones are, to me, I see them more as, yes, it's part of the Star Wars universe, but it's not going to have the same humor, the same magic that it held then as it does.
We solved it. You just, all you have to do is just watch the thing you like, and when the credits roll and the page is final, it's okay. That's it. That's all you have to have. Well, I'm glad. I don't think anyone is gonna be upset about that. So that you just want to call it a night.
Just leave the theater and call your mother and just go home.
Well, okay. So I feel like we kind of already know all this. So I'll pivot into a new talking about endings. But it's like, so if it comes to something with a known name, a licensed name like a Star Wars or a Marvel movie, or a comic or whatever, it's kind of like, there is, if it makes money, there's the production side of like, this thing is known, people recognize it, it has a value, let's keep giving it value. But as the human receiving it, you have to be like, cool, maybe I'll check out this new thing because I like the old thing, but it's yours. What you have is yours, and that's okay. And because like that's, as creators, that's what we're doing. We're making a thing that's ours until it's out there. Then it's everyone, and then whenever someone else takes it, it's kind of theirs too.
Yeah, and there is definitely I think this is what you're pivoting into. That it's different when it's the same creator all the way through. Right. Like there's a different kind of continuity when it's all the same team making it. The big comic example that comes to mind is Cerebus by Dave Sim. When it started, it was this kind of comedy, sword and sandal adventure comic, kind of parodying Red Sonja and Conan and a lot of things. And then Dave Sim, who wrote it and drew it, and then as it went on, it had backgrounds by Gerard. It developed into this very different thing until by the end of the series, it had gone from a pretty simple comedy adventure comic to like a big philosophical discussion about Dave Sim's the word problematic gets thrown around a lot, but Dave Sim's problematic philosophy on human relationships, until by the end of the series, what it began as this Conan spoof ends with like Cerebus old and like spending 5 issues trying to cross a room that he's dying in, as all of his children have like joined an evil matriarchy that's destroying God. Like it's wretched. It's not good, but it is the same guy all the way through. So if I feel like people feeling betrayed by that, it has a lot more validity than people feeling that, the new Jumanji ruined the Robin Williams one.
Right. Well, yeah, because there's a separation of endings, but there's also the idea of like, this show should have ended 3 seasons earlier. This comic should have wrapped at that arc and not like this. But like, I think and like I kind of want to move away from that too, because I think those are all just kind of like troll fodder avenues to go down. But it's the idea of like, yes, so as the consumer you have to realize there might have been other things at play, i.e. money, from studios or contracts or etc. And creators gotta get paid. I'll say that. I'll leave it there. But I understand that like an ending. So as a creator of something, I want to talk about the idea of natural endings versus forcing an ending.
Okay.
I guess like making something, and then I want to talk to like Cynthia, because you make toys and like, so you have this world and you know where these things are, but like the idea of ending, like, okay, I'm gonna end this line of toys. It's gonna be a limited run. I think there's a lot to be said about, or the idea of forcing an ending where you're like, I gotta wrap this up, and here you go, Deus Ex Machina, like solution. But I guess when you set out to make something, and as a beginning, what your ending is, like the natural ending, do you set out with having this very natural ending coming? Or do you just let the story progress and see? Like, do you think of the ending at first and do you let it naturally change? Or do you try to keep it?
I ascribe to that idea that you do have an ending that you're building to, and maybe that'll change a little bit. Like the thing I'm working on right now, Lavender Jack, the ending was set when we initially pitched it. And it's remained, I guess I'll say it's remained structurally the same, but emotionally it's a very different ending than initially planned. And I think that giving yourself the structure of a planned ending, but the freedom to sort of create inside of that is a good thing that you should try at home.
Everyone go write an ending right now. Get out a piece of paper and just write an ending. All right.
I guess for me, it works in different ways. Well, okay, if we're talking about like my characters and my toy lines and what I'm coming out with, like especially Land of 10, those are still in the very baby phase, and I don't want an ending quite yet.
Okay.
Like I'm building the story as I go. Like,
okay.
Right now I have ideas and sculpts and everything that I want to do and that I'm planning on doing.
There's phases.
There's phases that it goes through. So right now it's like I'm going through introducing characters, blind boxes, small sculpts, and they're going to grow and they're going to be bigger toys, bigger sculpts, more detail. So yeah, they're basically going to digivolve.
Cynthia, if you, even if you don't know, like again, structurally what the ending is going to be, do you have like a feel, like a thing you want the entire line to feel like when you're done, that you're kind of, do you have in mind?
Yes and no. Like, because I am very tied to a lot of the characters, like, well, as far as their emotions in the story. So a lot of the emotions of the characters are going to shift. So they're going to pretty much become opposite of what they are now. And so I have that idea that they're going to change. And it's different with each character, since it's not really like a story that I'm not like building dialogue. I'm not building like a script for them. I'm building what they look like, their expressions, like what they feel, and how that adds on to the sculpt I had before. So you're able to see the sculpt before and to what they turned into. So that'll tell a story from there.
It's like art toys and designer toys are almost like a painting where at the beginning and ending are all in it, and it's how you look at it. And then, but at the same time, if it's like a series of paintings or like a wave of toys, you're saying you have these characters that are going to go on this journey of like different stages of being like the small and evolving. But with that being said, each one, because it is a piece, it has its own ending and beginning, like on it, like, and like you're saying, this expression, the damage, the the wear and tear, the youth, whatever it is, as it evolves, it takes that with it. But you're seeing it and you're going, okay, so there's this and that. You're seeing a paused frame in a
toy, and then from there, I want to keep telling more. Like originally, I want to do like 4 different sculpts of each character that I have, and then hopefully be done with it then. But I don't know, because each one I add on to, I want to add more details. So it's like by the time they're at the 4th one, I don't know how detailed that's going to be. And like I have one character in particular that I haven't come out with yet, but they are been introduced and I've been talking about them. But it's Tinsby. He's the twin sphinx of Orion, one of my characters, and he's so I have these 2 sphinx. They're like twins, and Orion, he rhymes, but his rhymes are more like raps, like hip hop, and he's more charismatic and very flashy. And then there's Tinsby, that's more Shakespearean. Like that's more of and they're both the rulers of Atlanta 10. But Tinsby is going to go through an opposite shift. He's going to go through some weird stuff. So I have his idea of what I want his, but I'm taking my time with him because I care a lot about him and I want to make sure I transfer everything right, especially thinking of it in like 4 different looks. I want to be very careful and cautious with like what I'm doing because I care about it a lot and I wanted to transfer how I want it to.
It's interesting. Huh.
Yeah, I think, and also it's like same, I write. And so it's kind of like pitching a book to someone, whether it's a publisher or just even a friend or whatever it may be. You kind of have to know the ending to give them a story. Like, I guess if you're making something on your own, you might not know. Or like when you're first crafting a note of a thing, you're just letting it unfold and it continues to just spiral out and you go like, oh, now I see where this is going. Now I can have it end. But if you have to come out with a project and you want to pitch it, you kind of have to have an ending. But then the idea of a natural ending would be like, okay, but now that I'm 3 issues deep, I'm 2 stages into my thing, I can see that these characters, it's the full realization of a character of like, oh, well, now this Batman wouldn't do that anymore because from issue 1 to issue 3, we've learned that Batman throws a punch this way or makes a decision that way. Therefore, the ending I wrote won't work because that character wouldn't do that. And it's like the natural ending kind of becomes fully realized even as you set it out. Like you were saying, you could have that thing planted and where that sentence ends can be there, but how it's reached can change.
And that's what I love about toy design too. It's like making toys that's what you do when you play with toys. Like you play with them, you're interacting, you're moving things, and you're saying like so and so happens. And that's like the same thing with sculpting and designing these characters and like adding on to them, like whether I decide to give one of them a scar while I'm sculpting or this and that. While I'm sculpting and doing everything, there's a story going on in my head. And I guess it's like doing that, but with clay instead of words. And then how that's going to affect like how they interact with another character, which could give another character a different look. Like in my line of 10 toys, I have the Kaiser cat holding Orion's chain. Like because Orion has like this big cold chain, but the cat's holding it in one of the toys. So it's like you see something's going on there.
See, this is what fascinated me about magic cards when I was a kid. I wasn't smart enough to know how to play them. I couldn't figure it out. But the done-in-one narrative suggested by each card was fascinating. And I'm getting the same kind of like that I get when I hear you describe your line.
Yeah, it's like it has to have something that has an ending. It has but it's also a part of this world.
Especially when you read like the flavor text in Magic, like a lot of the cards and everything interact with each other and tells the story of what's happening in that world. Magic is awesome. I love Magic.
Endings, when I was a kid, endings were very sort of abstract to me because especially when I was getting into comics, a lot of the comics I got were just non-consecutive issues from half-price books. So my entire comic collection was a bunch of
books
for everyone. My collection was a lot of, part 2 of 4s where I never got the other parts. So what I loved about that, and what I also loved about the flavor text and magic cards and whatnot, wasn't so much an ending so much as the promise of a complete story elsewhere. Yeah. Which is what's so difficult about writing an ending or about bringing anything to a conclusion, is you're not just trying to reconcile the story up to that point. You are trying to match and ideally exceed the expectations of the ending that the audience is already writing in their head.
Right.
Because if you're a good writer, if you do your job, if you hit your landing, it'll be fine no matter what. But if you fail to meet the audience's expectation and not replace it with something else that's equally cool,
yeah,
they will feel like you've wasted their time.
Yeah, they like somehow you haven't given them the proper. Yeah,
that's why people hate part 3s. But that's why people bag on the Matrix movies and like the end of the Harry Potter series and stuff like that, or the Dark Knight Rises, because
it's just the hype beast. That is both the internet. That is the
except for Fast and Furious, we can't. Fast and Furious is amazing.
Just goes from strength to strength.
Yes.
From streets to space. That's what I want the next one to be.
What you expect. Like, they are ridiculous and out there and so much fun. You just want some cool action and cars going fast.
Well, and I guess that buys into kind of the first note of endings is like in a series or something is we hate the ending of a thing because we've hyped it up so it can never live up to this fictitious thing in our head. Because we didn't know what it was, but it wasn't that, so therefore it's not as good. But equally, we buy into it by clicking on every teaser of a trailer, of a teaser of a poster of
I can't wait till Game of Thrones ends. I love Game of Thrones, but I can't wait for it to end.
Yeah. So
here's something that happens with endings a lot that I think is
they just stopped.
Well, I think this plays into how sometimes people are disappointed by them. Uh-huh. And it reminds me of a scene in Entourage. There's an episode of Entourage where Vincent Chase, movie star, is thinking of looking at other agents aside from Jeremy Piven's Ari Gold, who's been with him at this up to this point in the series. And so Vince just wants to see what else is out there. And Ari gets wind that Vince is looking at other agents. And so there's a series of scenes where Vince and his entourage. I almost called them a posse. No, they're an entourage. That's why the show is what it is.
They're like some sort of group.
They're like a posse?
Buddies?
What are we, some kind of
dudes.
Entourage? Anyway.
Buddy dudes.
So they keep going to different agencies, and they keep seeing the same presentation. Where at every agency they go to, it's like, McDonald's, Chevrolet, Vincent Chase. We're going to make you a brand. And then they go to the next place and it's like Apple, Coca-Cola, Vincent Chase. We're going to make, like, everybody does the same thing.
Yeah.
And they decide, you know what? Everybody's so fake. Ari's always been real with us. Let's go. Let's sit down. Let's talk like men. Let's figure out our problems. And so they go to Ari's office, and Ari has put on all of these airs because he's figured out that they're looking for other representation. And so instead of going to their office, he has his assistant take them to the big conference room where all the agents are there and they all have champagne and there's a big screen and Ari stands in front of the screen and he's like, Intel, Audi, Vincent Chase, we're going to make you a brand.
No.
And Vince is like, fuck. Like,
everyone? Yeah.
Oh, do we cuss on this? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so Vince...
we fucking do.
Yeah, he's like, Ari, we came here because we thought you were real, but you're just as fake as everybody else. Now that's kind of a lame ending in and of itself because they should know he's real. He shouldn't have failed a test.
Bet later on, learned that
they patch it up. But I think that this is what happens a lot in endings, especially season finales of shows, is because it's the season finale, they start rolling out the red carpet where they like get guest stars and they put more money into it and they make it bigger than the other episodes. They make it like they put in more plot lines and oh, you didn't think this guy was going to be back, but he's back. Whereas the audience is just like, no, I was enjoying the story you were telling.
It's like Sex and the City.
Yeah.
I really feel that way. They should have, like the movie, I was like, do they need to come out with the movie? Okay, I'm going to watch the movie. And then they came out with the second one and I'm like, this is bad. They should have just ended it there. And that's another thing there where my mind is protecting itself and pretending it doesn't exist.
Pretending the movie isn't there.
Where it's just like, that movie is not there. All right.
Incidentally, Entourage ends really well and has a pretty good movie.
I heard Lost TV series has a pretty acceptable. Everyone got along with the ending on that. All the loose ends were put in little perfect bows.
The Mad Men ending is a really good ending.
Yes.
Shows that just do what they were doing.
Well, yeah. So maybe that's the difference between different types of stories. Something like The Office or even Entourage, which apparently has a good ending. But Mad Men, I felt like now I owe them $15. Oh yeah, it wasn't in key. It's fine. Is like you watch the show like The Office, and it's a character-driven, character-focused show. So you get to whenever they decide to end it, and it has to tie up all the loose ends of the 30 characters that they've introduced throughout the series and seasons, versus something like Mad Men, which I think, or Breaking Bad, which the creators kind of knew from the get-go the arc and the thing they wanted to tell. Whether like Jesse Pinkman was a character that was going to die in season 1 and was fan favorited, and therefore, you know, they saw the reception and they fell in love with the character just as much as the fans did, and they kept him on. And it added to the arc and the development, and that's why there's like the father-son stuff. But, you know, they had a vision and then they kind of saw it through, versus something where it's like, we're watching characters and like New Girl, you know, you can't have... It ends as soon as the people get... If Ross and Rachel get together in season 1, then what do you do with those characters? They've reached their kind of... Which is like sad, simple writing of like, now that they're paired off, there's no more growth. But it's the idea of like you can write them into a corner and then you have to just tie it off. And
yeah, you can always tell when a show or a movie series is putting the toys back in the box, and that's never fun. But if the ending of a show, I think what it really comes down to is if a show, if any kind of serial knows what it is about at its core. Like one of my favorite TV endings. Did you guys watch Justified?
No, I started to and I never finished it. I know. I need to go back.
I love that show.
It's
a modern Western.
I know.
Timothy Olyphant, fantastic on the eyes. Fantastic.
Can we just go back to talking about Mad Men? Because like Peggy is one of my favorite written characters ever.
She has such a cool journey throughout the whole show.
She does. Like, she's all over the place, and like she builds up to become better than Don Draper.
Yeah.
Like, she is so cool. And like she goes through all these awkward moments too.
Yeah.
Of just being like this young person and kind of being cocky too, and being a woman in that era. And yeah, Peggy, like that is one character that I have just satisfied, happy with the way all that ended and everything she went through.
Can I tell you what I love about the last scene between her and Dawn in the last episode? Is it's Dawn...
Spoiler.
Oh, it's soft spoiler, small s.
Yeah.
Dawn is at this retreat in California, and he's on the phone, and he calls, and Peggy picks up. And I love that Dawn... Who really isn't any closer to completing his spiritual journey. He's just as lost as he was at the beginning. And he's at this place where the whole point of it is they'll help you get to your spiritual journey. Yeah. And he's a mess. He can't, he is, even though he's literally across the country and at a place where you're supposed to grow. He hasn't grown at all. Whereas Peggy is right geographically where she started. But she has come so far. She has grown every step of the way. Whereas Don has run from everything that's been thrown at him, Peggy has used it as an opportunity to grow. And to the point that like their last scene together, they're on literal opposite sides of the country. I just think it's such a great way to stage the last interaction between those characters.
It is, and it's so interesting. Like, it's also one of those endings that doesn't really end because, like, Don Draper, it's frustrating because he never accepts who he is.
Yeah.
Like, he never fully does. And it even comes to that to the end. He gets to all these weird parts of his life, and you see that so much more being compared to Peggy, like you were saying. And
that's a show you could have seen go. Like, I'm glad it ended. I think it ended really well.
Yeah.
But because of how they wrote the characters, it could just like keep going into the 80s.
Seriously.
Well, didn't they do that fire something? Halt and Catch Fire. The same creators made a show in the 80s about like kind of Macintosh era
Oh, really?
stuff.
I didn't know that.
Halt and Catch Fire.
I'll check that out.
It's on Netflix.
Hey.
Streaming now. Half off priced books. I'm trying to get a sponsor
Everyone.
for everyone. Well, so I guess let's maybe talk about like.
And then you can read those books at the Living Room Cafe at multiple locations in San Diego.
Where you could wear plaid.
There you go.
Flannel.
Flannel.
Flannel. Coco Chanel.
All right,
Chanel.
what's our next thing?
Oh, well, okay. So I think maybe that comes to like what we like out of endings, or when we make something. I feel like you have these like character driven pieces in a world. They're interacting in a world. So there is no end and beginning. It's like watching characters in this world and them reaching some sort of final form ending.
It seems like it's almost like the character equivalent of doing mathematics. Like every character is a value into themselves.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
like it seems like it's going to be like you could pick up that magic card and like get something out of it, but you know it's a part of a larger piece. And we're seeing that as it is right now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's basically where I'm at, like with at least the line of 10. And so the way I'm trying to like keep my toy designs, and I guess something that has also come naturally, is I work on a line of 10, work on something else. Line of 10, something else. Line of 10, something else. Like I did the blind boxes last year. This year I did the fortune cats that I did of my 10 times a tiger logo. And then now after this, I want to go back to finishing a line of 10 piece. And so as far as the piece that I'm working on right now is Croc, and he's going to be a big piece. He's probably going to be about as big as this cup.
Wow.
And I'm working with an artist on this one. And all my line of 10 stuff, I have an artist that I work with, and his name is Santino. And we're in the process of like bouncing ideas back and forth with each other. And it's interesting how we work, because like I'll do rough sketches, ideas, send him pictures, and he'll send me sketches. I'll sculpt, send him like pictures of the sculpts and what I'm working on. So I work like in a way where it's like I'll sculpt roughly or sketch roughly, and or send him references, and then he's like, okay, I get what you're saying, and then we work from there. And then we're really lucky that we're compatible with our brains working that way, so we're able to register what we're saying and what we're talking about. And so I guess, what was the question, like coming to an end with that? When I feel like I'm at an end.
Yeah. It was like, what you're looking for, like your resolutions and coming to an end with each piece, or
it's a weird
it's a weird
question.
topic.
It's a weird question for me to answer, because when I'm sculpting something, I have the idea in my head and what I want, or the process, or whatever it is. I know when I hit that point. Like, it's rare when I have to be like, is it done? Is it over? I don't know. Should I add more? Should I take away? Like, sometimes I'll ask for opinions, but it's like, I've always known when I'm done.
Well, that's part of the artistry.
Yeah.
And I like, Logan, how you use the word resolution. Because I think resolution is a very constructive synonym for ending when we talk about it like this.
Yeah.
Because the resolution not only means, conclusion, but it also means finishing.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the point I want to make with the topic of endings is like, we all have different avenues to make them, to consume them, but it's usually a resolution that is really where something stops. It's where a season is done, even a series, a movie, there's a resolution, and that's like really what we're trying to get to is,
sell a piece for $1 million.
as soon as you get there.
That's my resolution.
Sugar mama. No. Look, all I'm saying, if you want to pay us,
I want a stay-at-home daddy. That's what we want.
no, but because an ending of something can be the beginning. Some stories start with an ending of something, and that's where that character. If it's a relationship, it's the end of a relationship, and then you're following this person who got out of it, but that was an ending. Technically, it's like it was the end of something that begins something new.
Well, like you were talking about the end of Breaking Bad. There is one character at the end of Breaking Bad.
That fly, it's that fly. It doesn't die.
Where his role in the story comes to a very definite end, but he himself does not. That is like a dynamite beginning for another story. Like you could almost see that character going on to be like Ryan Gosling in Drive or something like that. Like a good ending leaves characters in a place where anything is possible, or else nothing is possible. I feel like it's those two. If you're telling a tight story, you have either kind of like fixed a character's damage, or you have like so annihilated their possibilities that all they have left is whatever they've brought with them up to that point.
Right. I mean, so I have an example in my own work. The first story, I did a short story and then I turned it into a comic. It's called A Man with a Gun. A very controversial topic.
That's a good title.
Thank you. There's a man with a gun. Spoilers.
Is it just one?
At any given point, there's a man with a gun.
Got it.
But the way it ends, because I had a friend read it and go like, "Oh, I just want to see where it went next," or like, "So what? Like, would you follow up? Because this character, like, where do they go now?" And it's like, the spoilers. The honest ending is like, if you were to turn a page and get more story, they probably get arrested, and then they're in jail. Like they're not getting away scot-free. But if you roll back the credits like a little bit sooner, that resolution is the end of their character arc, where it's like they've resolved the damage and the thing emotionally that they were crippled by that you're invested in has reached its conclusion. Like they learned their lesson, and like the moral of the story is, and then it's credits, and that's where I left it. And I had a friend go like, "Would you do another like zine for it or something?" And I'm like, "No." I'm like, let's think about it. Let's just think about it. They get they probably don't get just because it ends with like a line where the guy that goes, he's talking to the cop and he's like, "There was a man with a gun," and then it ends because the title. But it's like realistically, he's probably going to continue to be questioned and then found guilty of something. So therefore, there's not really a sequel.
It's like the end of Seven. We just saw Seven last night, and it's like
Did you know that movie is pretty violent?
Oh my god!
I'm gonna say it.
Is it? There's actually not a ton of violence in it, is there? Like it's mainly just the aftermath of violence. That's not interesting. That's splitting hairs.
Favorite band though, Aftermath of Violence.
Oh
but yeah, like so I'm of the opinion that there's no bad premises, only bad execution. I think you can tell interesting stories. Like I thought Stephen King's novel Mr. Mercedes, which was about the kid from The Shining, I thought that was pretty interesting. But overall, I do agree. Like at the end of Sunset Boulevard, I don't want to know what happens after that. I don't want to know what happens after Chinatown. I don't. I didn't really want to know what happened after The Matrix.
So wait, okay. I thought we were going on a tangent. I'm like, you just don't want to know the rest of any Jack Nicholson roles.
I don't want to know what happens after Batman. I don't want to know what happens after The Departed. Although I genuinely don't want to know what happens after The Departed.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, The Departed.
But that's
so
another
good.
one.
Yeah.
Like Departed, 7, they both end where it's like,
And
if
it's
you
so,
kept
like,
seeing,
fast paced at the end where it's just like bam, 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 and then you're like, oh my god.
Oh god, when Marky Mark shows up at the very
But there really is nothing. There's nothing left to tell someone. No one's gonna learn anything more. They're just literally gonna see the rest of these lives play out. But it's like, you get grounded as a kid, and then you kind of sit there and you think about it, and then either your mom or your parent comes up, and you either say sorry first, or they ask you, and then you learn.
Sorry?
And then the rest of the story is, it's another day in your life, and you maybe get into trouble again. But it's like
Are you talking
right there.
about the movie Goodfellas?
They were bad fellas.
I know, none of them were good. I was watching the movie and I was like, Logan,
I got home and they were bad fellas.
there's not a single good fella.
We
in
turned
this
it off
movie.
right then.
They're all bad fellas.
Now, here's an interesting example. So there are endings that are so good that you don't need to know more stories about these characters, even though you are going to.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that. Well, you talk about Star Wars. The first Star Wars has a very satisfying ending. We don't need to know more, but it's kind of cool that we do.
Yeah.
Or even things like, okay, so one of my favorite fictional characters is Tarzan, just like conceptually. And there's like dozens of Tarzan books where he goes to the center of the earth and fights ants, and where he becomes immortal and fights a cheetah woman, like all this stuff. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But also, I really like the Disney movie where he just like gets married and is happy in the jungle forever.
And then he got a series, and he does go to the center of the earth.
Oh, that's right. That was kind of a good show, actually.
Are we talking about the animated? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, the Disney Tarzan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the show.
Yeah, the TV show
Yeah.
that
based
was,
on the movie. It
yes,
was good.
It was really cute.
Yeah.
It was.
Like, I have weird memories of that show.
Well, and it incorporates a lot of stuff from the Tarzan books, like Law and the City of Opar and stuff like
And
that.
like the Hollywood people coming in and trying to like capitalize on it. Yeah. Good stuff. We know what we just recommend checking out the whole Tarzaniverse.
You can free boot it on
Tarzaniverse.
YouTube.
The Tarzaniverse.
But both of the Disney like male hero movies they made both didn't do too hot, so you can find the Hercules show, which is pretty good, and the Tarzan show that are pretty good.
Or
easily,
Young Hercules with a very young Ryan Gosling.
which is hot trash.
It is.
That
bad.
exists.
But
Yeah.
I think it's
Ryan
connected.
That
Gosling.
sounds like-
He was the young Kevin Sorbo Hercules.
It
my
was
God.
loosely connected to the Xena universe.
That
so,
almost sounded like Logan, like fan fiction for a second. Ryan
Look.
Gosling, young Tarzan.
Young Hercules.
There's
Or
an
Hercules,
episode
yeah.
of the Young Hercules series where Hercules, and he's even of the animated Hercules series because he's still in high school in that series.
Yes.
There's an episode of that where he teams up with Aladdin. Remember that?
Because Aladdin got a series too.
Aladdin
now
got
we're
a
just
series
talking
too.
about
Oh
things
my
that,
god, my brain is like
See, this is a great
trying
example.
to grab
of getting
on.
sequels
Yeah,
as endings.
So I, not as humans, but as like a pop cultural entity, I really like the Rat Pack, which is Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., and some other guy. And
I thought just like 4 rats hanging out.
what I dig about them and about watching their concerts and whatnot is they'd go out in their tuxedos, smoking, half faded, and they do their standards.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just kind of fuck around for a little bit, and they improvise little skits, and they just talk amongst themselves.
They are sassy.
Yeah.
They are so sassy.
And they'll like do another song, talk to the audience. I like that. I like the end of Django where everything's resolved, and he just like kind of dances with the horse for a little bit, and then the movie's over. Like I think that these animated series we're talking about are examples of stories that had really good endings. And then just like, let's have some fun for a while. Let's mess around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, but that it comes back to, so since we're at an hour, we're gonna
dance.
What if I just cut it right here as the ending, abrupt. Bam, bam, bam. No, it's like looking for resolutions. I mean, and really not coming to, there's no ultimate ending because, like we said, it begets something else, and anything can get a sequel or just continue on. But what we're looking for, I think, as creators, and even like the things we're satisfied with, are things that have a resolution, or the idea that there is no resolution but it is a form of resolution. Like the fact that there is no ending to this thing is an ending, and it's like is the lesson in itself. It's the resolution of there is nothing. Like, but either way, you're looking for satisfaction or the acceptance of not acceptance, whatever.
Sometimes just knowing that a thing doesn't end is enough. Like the end of Quantum Leap. Quantum Leap, of course.
80s hit show with.
Why can't I remember his name?
He was in the show Chuck.
He was Enterprise. He was Mr. Enterprise in Enterprise.
He was in the show.
Scott Bakula. There we go. Scott Bakula. The whole show is him traveling through time by going into people's bodies throughout time, and then he has to, like, inhabiting their bodies, looking like them. He's basically Dead Man. He's basically Boston Brand.
Okay, I was going to reference that too.
Yeah, he has to solve a thing that's wrong in their life. He has to set right what once went wrong, and once he does, he quantum leaps out of their bodies, and then into the ether of time, hoping each time that the next leap will be the leap home. And at the end of the last episode, we find out that he never gets home. He just keeps leaping through bodies for all time, just doing good deeds, just setting right what once went wrong forever. And I remember being shattered by that as a kid, but also there's something weirdly satisfying about it.
Beautiful about it, too. It's like he's serving a purpose.
Yeah, he's serving a purpose.
It's kind of like I'm surprised I didn't talk about this earlier with endings. Mother. Did you ever see Mother?
The film that just came out?
Yeah.
With
Jennifer
Javier
Lawrence?
Bardem.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, this is
gonna be a hot.
This has probably never happened to me before.
Okay.
Where I watched a movie, immediately had to watch it again.
Really?
Because I watched it and I was like, okay, I'm getting the hints, some biblical stuff going on. All right, I got it. Then it's like slow pace. There's a lot of weird stuff going on, and you're intrigued throughout it. Then all of a sudden, just chaos happens, and all these awful, dark things just keep happening, and they don't end. And then the ending is like, 2 minutes, maybe a minute long, and it's peaceful. It's sad. And then I was like, Logan! Logan! I was like, oh my God. I don't know what I just watched, but I need to watch it again. And I love that movie. I'm sure it's very obscure and weird, things that you wouldn't catch right away unless like you knew what was happening in the movie. But a lot of people didn't like the movie, but I liked the fact that I wanted to watch it again, that I had to watch it again, that I was like, oh my God, I don't know what just happened.
A good ending can do that. A good ending, if you manage to stick the landing right with an ending, I'm not saying that only good endings are like this. I think there are a lot of good endings that bring you to this great catharsis and you feel like done. But some endings make it so that the story never ends. It puts you in this loop forever. And that can be just as fulfilling. Yeah.
And that's how it was with...
Yeah. I mean, and once again, it's coming to the idea that it can end with you wanting more or wishing you had more, but knowing that's all that there is like the wanting and like not needing it.
I think the key is not making the viewers feel like they didn't get enough.
Yeah. Right. So,
like that they didn't get their money's worth, I think is really what I want to say.
Yeah.
Because it's good to leave them feeling like, oh, I wish there was more, but not like there needs to have been more for me to feel like this was worth my time.
I don't understand where's the last sentence. Yeah.
And some people, I don't know, some people don't get endings that do actually make sense. So
as
art subjective.
As a creator, like, I would say, yeah, like I try to see the end of where I want it to end, whether that means that, like, yes, the sun would rise again tomorrow, and you could keep asking for more, and hopefully seeing that these characters that you fell in love with, you'd want to see more from them because their lives are still going to continue to be interesting, or not, but you want that and you're happy with that. Or even just like, it's not just about the characters. It's like, it's an emotional ending. It's an emotional, the whole thing is a piece that answers a question that is asked. And, I think that's what I look for. I think I sometimes ask a question, and then when it feels answered, that's where it ends, whether those characters would continue to be interesting or not.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you haven't crafted, if it's the ending, if it's the final part, and you haven't crafted entertaining characters up to that point, then the ending's not going to be good no matter what.
Crap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Back to the drawing board.
The only thing that makes a good ending is investment in the fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it genuinely doesn't matter if Cliff and Crazy Jane get together, because they don't exist. But if enough moment and importance has been built around them, then the ending can be straight up magical.
And it's like, I don't know if anyone's ever said this way, but it's not where you end. It's the journey that you took. Yeah, I think that's pretty original.
Is that what we're gonna end on?
Yeah,
and mainly because I really have to pee.
But no, of course it's the journey, and that's why you're investing. And it shouldn't matter where that period lands. Did you enjoy the ride?
And I think that's why we create too.
And I think we could talk this into the ground and divide it and talk about topics like specific universes and things like that. But yeah, I'm just glad we got to talk about endings and like how we feel and the idea of them and what it is. And I hope you all learned something too, like half price books.
In the comments below, talk about some endings that you really liked, or maybe some that you found unsatisfying. And if you didn't find something satisfying, maybe talk about why, or theorize how you would have liked it to end.
So how would they be able to reach all of us through social media, like on Twitter or something like that, to continue the conversation?
Well, there's going to be links below, but you can reach me on Twitter at Dan Schkade. I'm also on Instagram at Dan Schkade. You can check out my website, danschkade.com, where I'm posting links to my work and hot new content.
Hot and new.
Cynthia,
yeah.
Where can people find you?
You can find my hot new content at Instagram, 10 times a tiger, or Facebook 10 times a tiger, or YouTube 10 times a tiger, or buy my toys at 10timesatiger.com, or message me wherever, and we could talk about Carrie Bradshaw. Cool.
And lastly, you already found the show, so you're already watching, but for more content from me, you can follow me at @Logan on all the social medias, active mostly on Instagram and Twitter. But yeah, please tweet, tag, whatever, what you think about endings. And
hit that like button. Hit subscribe.
Smash it.
Hit the bell icon so you get updates when
fun for everyone. Half off time. Go with the end song theme.
This has been a Geeks Rising production. Your executive producer of Vandrew Scott. For more information, head over to www.geeksrising.com.